Hey everyone, it's Miriam with a Y from Miriam's Nature. For this project, we're going to take the resin nebula that I did in my very first YouTube video and take it to the next level by making a 3D resin and acrylic pouring space scene with stars, planets, and some nebula-like prettiness too. This will involve a couple of small dirty pours as well as a couple of resin layers. So it will take more than a day or two to complete because we'll need to let each layer cure somewhat before moving on to the next. I will go over the materials you'll need for each step as we approach that step. To keep the video as short as possible, I'm going to do 3 layers, but you can go beyond that for even more depth. For inspiration, I recommend doing a Google search for images. Just type in words like galaxy, nebula, cosmos, universe, and add the word stars or planets, and you'll be flooded with stunning images. Now, if you sell your work, make sure not to reproduce copyrighted material. Use it as inspiration, but don't copy the exact image. For step 1, you're going to need black paint, white paint, or whatever light color you want to paint your stars. It doesn't need to be high-end paint at all. Craft paint will do you just fine. You might want to use some iridescent medium, that might be fun, or some light color metallics of some sort. This is all to make your stars. And for tools, you're going to need either a wide bristled brush, or I like to use foam brushes for just painting your background black. And if you have a dotting stylus, you might want to use that, and or an old toothbrush. And you're going to need something to create your galaxy on. I recommend a wooden canvas if you have one or can get one, something like this, or even something shallow or like this. If you're adventurous, you can even build your own. Or another option can be just using a piece of wood or a canvas panel and then putting tape around it, and you'll decide on what height you want it to be. You'll put the tape all the way around the canvas to build up a wall that can contain your resin as you're building your layers. Keep in mind that the depths here will determine how many layers you can make. So now we have our canvas and we're going to paint it black on the inside. And for simplicity's sake, I'm also going to paint the border black, but you don't have to. You can paint the border any color you want, but whatever color you choose, do it as neatly as you can. Let's say you chose red. You wouldn't want red dripping into the inside here because this area inside is your galaxy. For simplicity's sake, I recommend just making the whole thing black, but be as adventurous as you like. My canvas is entirely painted black now. I've painted all the sides black as well, and I am ready to start adding some stars, just a few for the very, very far background. And there are a couple of ways to do that. One is to use an old toothbrush. And what you would do is dip it into a little bit of white paint or whatever color stars you want, some light color. And then with the bristles pointing down, but I'm going to point them up just so you can see what I'm doing, you would flick the bristles like this. And what will happen is it'll spray little droplets onto your canvas. If you're going to do that, I'm going to give you a couple of tips first. Practice on something just to see what the spray looks like for you. Is it too many stars? Not enough? Practice what distance you should go to see what kind of splatter you want. And also protect your frame. So cover your frame with painter's tape now. I don't need to do that because I'm not going to be using this method. I'm going to individually dot my own stars. I kind of like doing that. I like kind of deciding where my stars go and what size they're all going to be and that sort of thing. I've made myself a quick sketch of where I want everything to go. So I know that I want a big planet right about here. There'll be another little planet sort of in front of it, and then one out there, and some nebula-like stuff, and over here and here. And so the bulk of my stars are going to be in this area. So I only have to worry about placing stars there. I don't have to bother doing it here. If you're going to be doing the spray method with the toothbrush, don't be too concerned about where your stars end up, because when you add your planets and whatever other elements you choose to add, it'll cover up whatever background stars you don't need, so it doesn't really matter. I've opted to go with the iridescent medium because it's very twinkly without being like glitter, and it's a little bit more sparkly than just metallic paint, so I kind of like it. So I'm going to use this for my stars. Other options for dotting stars are paint pens, glitter gel pens, but most of us have paint. So I just added a straight drop of the iridescent medium from the tube here. And then here I've watered it down a little bit. Probably like 1 part medium to, I don't know, 1 or 2 parts water, just to thin it down. I don't want to fill up my entire background layer with all the stars. I want some on every layer for a good 3D effect. Now I'm using the end of a ball stylus, but anything can do this. You can use a toothpick, a bamboo skewer, heck, you can even use a dull pencil to do the job. I've zoomed you in so that you can see a couple of things that you can add, so you don't just have to have white dots. One of the reasons that I thinned the white paint here is so that I can create what I would call a halo. So it's just a thinner, lighter version of the paint here, and then in the center I'm going to put a bright white dot. So you want to make a couple of those maybe just to give, again, the stars more of a variety, and make these all different sizes too, and make the halos all different levels of brightness. Now let's create a starburst. So for that I'm going to load up the end of my skewer. I'm using a bamboo skewer because you want something really pointy for this. And I'm going to drag the point north, south, east, and west. And then maybe I'll do another drag in the middle too of all the points. And then, again, put a brighter spot right in the middle. And make a couple of these. And if you mess one up, no big deal. Just paint over it with black and do it again. No one will ever know. Now, if you want to be really adventurous, maybe add a spiral galaxy. So what I'm going to do that is make a bit of an oval, and then start out from the middle and come out of it. And what's great about these is they're always fuzzy, so it doesn't even need to be perfect. And you just kind of want to do this sort of motion and the opposite. And my last step is to kind of make the tails a little longer. And then I'm going to call that done. But for me, this one's not going to show. This was just more to show you how, but I ended up painting this where my big planet's going to go, so it'll end up being covered up. But if you want one, that's kind of how you can make one. If you haven't done it yet, now's a good time to protect your frame if you have one. Here we're just protecting against possible tiny drips of resin while we're moving the cup around when we pour it in. So good old Scotch tape is just going to be fine. My frame is taped up and I'm all gloved up so I can mix some resin to pour in the center. If you have old resin that's gone yellow a bit, this is a great project to use it up because it wouldn't show in this first layer. I have a collection of various resins that I've tried over the years that are, no lie, years old. And at the time, I didn't store a lot of them well. And in cases like that, the hardener takes on a slight yellow cast if it's a decent yellow resistant resin, and goes really, really yellow if it's one that doesn't have decent yellowing protection. Here's a tip. Store your very tightly sealed hardener in the refrigerator. A couple of things the hardener hates the most are humidity, light, and heat. So if tightly sealed against the humidity of the refrigerator, the hardener can spend a really long time in there without any change. Now, every single resin in the universe will yellow over time. That's just the nature of the beast. But when possible, choose one that will do it so slowly and be good to you in other ways too. That's why I always tell you about Clearcast 7050. There's also a Clearcast 7000, which cures a little more flexible than this one. They're really good at resisting yellowing. They're crystal clear, they're safe to use indoors, and well priced, which, if you don't have the money to burn, is important for projects like this that use a fair amount of resin. To pour a good full layer, I figure out how many square inches my canvas is. My inner area here is 8 by 8 inches, or 64 square inches. So I know that I need at least 64 milliliters of resin, which is just over 2 ounces. So for depth, I mixed up 3 ounces of resin for my first layer. Now, before you pour, make sure that every little speck of dust that you want is out of there, because any little speck that's on here, because especially it's a black background, is going to show, and it'll be in here for life. So hopefully you can pass it off as a star or an asteroid or something, but if you can get it out, get them out now. All right, now I'm going to pour this layer and make sure that it's nicely, evenly spread. And now pass a torch over it really quickly to pop any surface bubbles. Now I'm going to let this cure for just a few hours. I don't need it to be rock hard, just past the point of being tacky, because I need to be able to touch it when I'm working on the next layer. Let's work on our planets while that first layer of resin cures. My plan is to make them from acrylic skins. It'll be easier than trying to paint by hand on the resin, and we'll be able to get a lot of interesting detail that would also be pretty challenging to paint by hand. Now, some of you may be like me and you have a collection of skins that you've accumulated from the runoff of other dirty pours, or maybe you make some on purpose. But if not, let's make one now. Now, if you're totally unfamiliar with acrylic skins, all one is paint that you've let dry on a surface and then peeled off. It can be cut up to make jewelry, decorate objects, etc. And here I just pulled out a handful that might be usable for our planets. I made these on regular kitchen freezer paper, which is shiny plastic on one side and paper on the other side. I make the skin on the plastic side so that I can peel it off when I'm ready to use it. And I store it on the freezer paper. And sometimes I actually leave it on the freezer paper even when I use the skin, because it's easier to manipulate. I can cut it easily when it's on the paper. I can draw the design I need on the freezer paper. And a lot of applications don't require removing the paper for use, which may be the case for us. So what I do is wrap the freezer paper around a supporting surface to keep it flat. So in this case, I wrapped it around a ceramic tile, since I'm going to make a small skin. I've chosen these colors for a quick dirty pour because I want something that has a Jupiter-like look. So So very quickly I'm pouring out colors from my pour, just little amounts. I'm thinking that's enough because it's only for one planet. And I'm just going to do a stretch swirl. So I think that'll give me the look that I'm after. And then I'm going to border with some white so that when I go to tilt it, it'll move easily. But I'm going to stretch it out more. I want it to curve a little. I'm going to stop right there and let this dry. And I think we can get a pretty nice planet out of that. For this layer, you'll need things to help you trace and cut out circles of different sizes. Hole punches can help, a circle template, and scissors, small glasses, and even coins can help. You'll need either double-sided tape or maybe a quick-drying glue stick. You'll want some mica powder and whatever colors you choose to form your nebula. And it doesn't need to be expensive. These are little eyeshadow jars that I get from eBay, and they are about $1.50 each. Or you might be able to find loose powder form eyeshadow at your dollar store. And finally, you'll need whatever you choose for mixing your colors into your resin. Personally, I'm going to use baby Ziploc bags, and if you haven't seen me do that in other videos, I'll show you how I do that in this one too. I've cut out a couple of paper circles and made myself a template for the corner planet to help me sort of plan out the placement and the number and sizes of everything, as well as to start deciding on their colors. My corner planet will go here, and I'm thinking maybe a larger planet, and then I want a planet that's sort of in front of this one. So this size, and I think I'm going to go with that size for the overlapping planet. Now, when I go to cut out my planet, what I can do is sort of move my skin around to see what area I best want. But since I don't have a punch for this shape or size, I made myself a template so that I can move it around my skin to decide what portion I want to cut out for my corner planet. And if you're using a circle template, you can certainly do the same thing as well. I've chosen these colors and cut out the skins that I want. Now, I want to give the planets a little bit of a highlight and a shadow to give them a little extra dimension. What I've done here is put a couple of drops of white paint and a drop or two of black paint, and I've thinned them down a little bit with some water. And now I just have a stick, a toothpick will work, or the end of a paintbrush. And all I'm going to do is dunk my stick into this thinned white paint, and I'm just going to run it along the edge. And I'm going to do that to all of these. Now, for the full planets, you only want to do that little white outline on half the planet. Now, with ideally a piece of sponge, like if you have a foam brush, or you can use a wadded up piece of tissue paper, I'm going to dab this into my white paint, and I'm going to take off as much of it as I can. I want this to be pretty dry. And now I'm just going to give the edge sort of a blurred white edge, as blurred as I can. And this is to sort of soften the highlight. Now for the opposite side of this planet, because it's so pretty, I don't want to really cover it in black too much. So I'm actually mixing a little bit of white in my black and then sort of dabbing at the edge to get more of a gray. And then after having done that, now I'll sort of tip the edge with more of a pure black. So that's that one. And this one, I've mixed up a little bit of gray so that I can do more of a transition, since now I have a big surface to work out. And, you know, I mean, you can go nuts and take your shadow in. I made this one just as a sample. You can take your shadow in really far into the planet. But again, for me, I really want the skin to show as much as possible. So I want to minimize how much I cover up. But for the piece you're working on, a really dramatic fade might be more appropriate. So I'm just going to start out with the gray and soften the edge a little bit. And coming in now for a little bit more of a dark color as I kind of fade out to black, so to speak. So now that I've finished off painting the little edges, I'll show you what they look like in the piece. Before getting to the resin, I'm going to attach the big planet to this initial resin layer using double stick tape, which I've already put onto the back. The reason that I'm not using a liquid glue for this step is that glue off-gasses while it cures and dries. And in that process, it could cause bubbles to leak out into my next layer of resin, and we don't want that. So double stick tape is your friend. I'm going to add a few stars to this layer to start working on the 3D effect. And for fun, I'm adding a big starburst on the edge of the planet. I've made a really pale halo and then a brighter, bigger spot in the middle, and now I'm just making rays coming out of it. And I'm using the end of a bamboo skewer because I really want a fine point for this. Okay, let's move on to the resin now. I've mixed up some resin and I've pulled out a couple of the colors now for the nebula. I've also made myself a little mark to remember where this planet is going to go so that I don't put the nebula there. What I do when I'm going to mix a very small amount of resin with a color, I just add a little bit of resin to a baby Ziploc bag that has my colorant in it, in this case the mica. So I'm just going to suck up some resin in this pipette and squeeze it into this little baggie. After I've got my little bit of resin in there, I seal the bag and I work the resin into the mica. And then now I have a small amount that I need. I'm going to pour some resin here, spread it around. Now in one of the little Ziplocs, I'm just going to cut one of the bottom corners, and now the bag is like a little cake decorating tool. It lets me have real good control over where I'm going to spread my resin. Now, the resin has about a 45-minute work time. The fact that it's a thin layer is also going to give me more of a work time. Unlike something that has to dry, if it was like water, the thinner the layer, the faster it would evaporate. But resin, the thinner it is, the slower it is to cure. So if it was a thick layer, it would be curing super fast and I'd have to work faster. But because it's so thin, I've got quite a bit of work time. And I can play and really obsess all I want. Well, this color is really interesting. It's blue, but when it's up against black, it takes on this sort of golden tone too. This is to give some parts of the nebula a little bit of definition. I'm going to use my heat gun and warm the resin so that it flows a little bit and soften some of the lines that I made. But after you've heated resin, it's very flowy for a little bit, but now it's also going to start to cure faster because resin heats up as it cures. So the fact that I've heated it is just encouraging it to cure now. And what I'm going to do with the rest of the resin that I have here is sort of make a little bit of a platform to rest my planet on. A couple of hours have passed. The resin is on its way to being fully cured, but it's still tacky, so I can press on my second planet. I've decided to let the highlight of this planet sort of face that planet, so as if this star is lighting this planet. And I'm setting it down on that little elevated platform of resin, and I'm going to press to get it nicely stuck down. Now this layer is going to cover the entire surface. So I mixed up 2 ounces of resin. I am going to add a little bit of resin to each of my nebula colors. And this time around, I've decided to add a little bit of white glitter for a little added sparkle. So now, just going to pour resin everywhere and leave a little bit in case I need it for something. You never know what. Tilt and get it to cover the whole surface. And after you've poured a layer, always check the corners. That's where bubbles love to hide. Now, if you remember, this mica layer isn't fully cured. So if you're wondering, well, can you add a new layer on top of a layer that hasn't fully cured? Absolutely. In fact, the bond between layers can be stronger that way. Though in a contained piece like this, that really wouldn't matter so much. But you do not need to let a layer fully cure before adding your next layer. Well, since this color surprised the heck out of me, it's my first time using it. Once mixed into the resin, it's like this royal blue. Beautiful, and I'm totally okay with that, but I kind of wanted a touch of purple too, so I pulled out some perfect pearls in purple and mixed a little bit of that too. This is not at all what I was expecting. A happy little surprise. So let's see what this one is like down on the surface. By adding another layer of resin, the nebula will have a lot of depth and excitement. A little purple. And because this layer is nice and fluid, I can tilt and move it around a little bit. So this time I won't have to use the heat gun. And the last thing I'm going to do to this layer before putting it to bed to fully cure is add a little bit of sparkle to the black areas and really swirl it around so that the stars, these little tiny stars, are really well dispersed. And my last step before covering this up is just running the torch over it really quickly to pop any bubbles. Tomorrow I can paint in my last few stars, add my last planet, and add the final layer. With this layer fully cured now, after cutting out a small round disc smaller than this planet, I attached both with double stick tape and then attached this planet to this layer of resin. And the reason I did that was just to elevate this planet a little higher still, so that all the planets now are at different heights. And now I'm going to add a few more stars before pouring my next layer of resin. And this is a good time to look for any blemishes you need to fix. Maybe you have a bubble you need to hide, or maybe a piece of dust that landed in here that you didn't realize. So if that's the case, put a star on it. No one will know. And the more you add interest to your different layers, the more successful I think it'll be. And to really take advantage of the depth that you're creating, move the piece around a little bit. Maybe you've got quite a few stars in an area, but all of them are in lower layers. So maybe add one or two to the top layer. That way you really get a nice sense of depth. All my stars are where I want them. I've mixed up some resin, and since I put a little disc under this planet, there's a little bit of space underneath it. And what I'm going to do to make sure that I don't get bubbles there is fill that area with resin first. And having taken care of that, I can now start pouring resin over the rest. I'm going to do a quick bubble check, let this cure for a couple of hours, and I still have a little bit of room, so I can add another layer and therefore a few more stars for even extra depth. So here it is now, after a few more tiny stars and a final coat of resin. Needless to say, I love this piece. It makes my heart sing so much. Now, capturing the 3D quality, it's near impossible, but I at least hope you can see the beauty of the mica, the sparkle of the glitter, the shimmer of the stars. Oh my gosh, I love this. I so hope you enjoyed this project, but now I'm going to take it further. Some of you have already been clever enough to have subscribed to my YouTube partner in crime, Michael, who's in Germany. He has an amazing channel, and he's so fun to watch. Back in December, that boy challenged me to make acrylic pouring Christmas ornaments, and I did it, but I wanted to wait until this video to do a couple of things. Hi everyone, it's Miriam with a Y. Now, this moment is not likely to happen that often because I'm pretty camera shy. But you viewers have been so amazing to me that I really felt that I needed to say hello. Especially since this is my 50th video and you guys have taken me to over 20,000 subscribers. That's crazy to me. But I really wanted to say thank you and to say hello. So, hello, how you doing? Okay, now on to some serious business. Michael, dear Michael, This is a challenge. Here are your rules. Make a space-themed fluid art piece that uses both acrylic pouring and resin in any way you like. And since you like to work big, yours needs to be bigger. I'm not saying it needs to be as enormous as that amazing pour you did of the world map. Oh my gosh, if you guys haven't seen that video, it's awesome. This doesn't need to be that big. It doesn't have to be visible from space or anything. And because it's going to be big, you don't have to make multiple layers of resin because that would be insanely expensive, and I know that. But resin's got to be in there somewhere. Okay, there you go. Gotcha. If you like this video, those of you that haven't already subscribed to Michael's channel, I don't know what you're waiting for, but you really ought to because he's likely to blow me out of the water with whatever he's going to do. I'm already drooling just thinking about it. I want to say thank you really from the bottom of my heart to all of you that have subscribed and leave the most amazingly kind, generous, thoughtful comments. I am speechless most of the time. Many of them bring me to tears, literally, and they add more than I can tell you to my day. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you also to those of you that are using my links to get you to Amazon. And for those of you that have actually donated to the channel, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I have been putting together some really fun projects and I can't wait to share them with you. If you haven't already done it though, subscribe now so that you will see all that fun stuff. And hit the thumbs up if this was a fun video for you. And say hi in the comments, because like I said, I love reading them and they make my day. I may not be able to answer all of them, but I try my best, honest, I really do. And the very last thing I want to do is dedicate this video to a young man named Charlie. He watches this channel with his mom, Jen. And I know that he is a big sci-fi space nerd, just like me and Michael. So I just really wanted to say, hi, Charlie. This video is kind of for you too. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Go let your creative nature shine now. See you next time. Bye now.